Final Fantasy III. Wow, is this a game that really made an impact? This was the third game ever released in the Final Fantasy franchise. It was released in 1990, if you can believe that. 1990 on the Famicom. That's what the NES was known as over in Japan. And boy, did it take a while for this one to be released in America. Now, you have to know that when the first Final Fantasy game came over to America, it was nearing the end. It was really at the end of the Nintendo's life cycle, so to speak. So, what they decided to do was when they released the first, the fourth Final Fantasy, worldwide or outside of Japan, I should say. That got known as number two. Then they skipped number five, reporting it to overseas, and they released number six as number three. But the actual number three never made it to America, unless you want to call like ROMs that were hacked to bring it to America. Now, it would not see an official American release until 2006. It was by about this time that Nintendo and Square got back on good terms. And the Final Fantasy 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6 got released on the Game Boy Advance. It wasn't a far cry. I mean, 1 and 2 had to be updated a little bit, but 4, 5, and 6, they had to add stuff to it to make it more appealing, I guess. But 3 didn't get that. 3 ended up getting ported to the DS. And it was a big thing when it was released in 2006. It was the first time that this game would be seen in America. It'd be the first time the game was seen outside of Japan. Because even to that day, any re-release of the prior Final Fantasies always included 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6. Never 3. So, and my late wife, she got me this one for Christmas, the same Christmas my daughter was born. So, it means a lot to me, this particular one. And when you look through it all and all the history of it, this had some landmark things that got reused in later games. This was actually the first time the job system was used in a Final Fantasy game. They would bring this back in 5, I believe. And, having played through it now completely, I appreciate what the story was. A shame I never got through the DS version. But I will say this. They gave a good 3D treatment to that one, and they did a very decent job with 4 then, too. But we're talking about 3. And is actually the first one where you really get dropped into it. Literally. I am in you start having fallen into a cave, and I think it starts with a team of three, but I might be wrong. I mean, you pick up a fourth later in the game, I think. But you fall into this cave, and it happens after an earthquake. So you have to work your way out. I also think that this was one of the first Final Fantasies where you actually could find stuff by interacting with things when, prompted. I could be wrong. But as you make your way through the caverns, trying to find a way out, you actually come across your first boss in the game. And one of the crystals of light. Now, as you play through and you find this crystal and defeat the boss and get bestowed with your first jobs, it seems you have been picked to be the warriors of light. And you are part of sort of like a cyclical prophecy, I would say. You see, now, this is also where you learn that if you didn't like read the manual or anything like that, that you are on a floating continent. And this was somewhat done to protect people. You see, apparently long ago there had been a threat to the world. The threat being that the forces of light were starting to get too strong. And so the warriors of darkness had to come and subdue the light to an extent. You see, if one side ever starts getting too strong, this is when the warriors have to come about to bring it back into balance. But if things get thrown too far, that's the real problem. So, what ends up happening is that these forces of darkness are starting to get too strong. I mean, a genie has been released that has turned a town and all the inhabitants of a castle basically invisible into like silhouettes, stick figures, outlines. And this genie is also hiding as one of the crystals, so you have to defeat them. And you have to start setting some peace on the floating continent before you can, so you can get the kind of vehicles you need to venture out of the floating continent. And just to make things a little bit more difficult, there are some places you can only go into if you are tiny. And some places you probably could only go into if you're a frog. That one's not so bad, it's just being able to undo it. But the other, when you are miniaturized, any fighters are vastly weaken. And like you have to go through this tiny tunnel to get through to one area, even to a village of shrunken beings. You have to get four elemental fangs in the course of your journeys. You have to appease a very ferocious sea serpent. And you also learn about how the warriors of light were foretold in an ancient prophecy, and the warriors of darkness, too. Now, of course, once you get everything together and finally get a decent airship, you can actually leave the floating continent to what appears to be a world almost completely covered in water. So you literally have to go to the water shrine, which again lets you get another crystal and get some more jobs. But once the whole world is, drained, you're out for a bit. Someone has been put under the assumption that uh, you're a threat and they are, lock your ship down. You have to go into this golden palace to get your key to free it and fight the bad guy there. And, he loves gold. I mean, every monster you fight in the place is gold. You have to end the turmoil that is in another country and eventually find a stronger airship. As your particular airship sort of gets ruined because the king has been convinced by his quote advisor, which is another force of darkness. You end up meeting two sages that will help you, but as part of that help and getting everything you need, like the fangs, and entering into this cavern of shadows through your new airship, do you find that you get your last fang and then you can now venture forward to the real enemy. You see, at that time there were three mages that were gifted with certain abilities, and the one went a bit, you know, cuckoo loco, and he's been fostering the darkness. So, the two mages that you find and make your allies, they decide to sacrifice their lives so you can venture forward. Not only is it to get into his stronghold, which is a crystal tower, behind these gates that you have to use the fangs to break, but they also give you a key to a realm that has some of the most badass weaponry, as well as two very powerful jobs, ninja and I think sage or great mage or something like that. It's eluding me at the moment. And once you go there and defeat this, whacked out mage, or this whacked out guy, uh, Zand, Xande, Well, this is where you get introduced to the main entity, the main baddie, the big baddie, the cloud of darkness. You see, when either light or darkness gets too strong, this is the force that comes forward. And what they want to do is bring the whole world back into oblivion. That is why the warriors of light and the warriors of darkness appear. They are to restore the balance. If it gets too dark, that it could summon the cloud of darkness, the warriors of light appear. If the power of light gets too strong, again, summoning forth the cloud of darkness, because too much good can corrupt. Too much light power can corrupt. You do not know if you are bad if you do not have evil to face off against, so to speak. That's when the warriors of darkness come forward. They are trying to restore balance. So when you enter into the world of darkness after having your butts absolutely kicked and a certain group of heroes, which people that you've helped throughout the story of the game, well, with them, having helped you, by distracting a trap, and then their faith in you restores you to, you go into the world of darkness and go to the crystals there who will help you in defeating the cloud of darkness because these are now where the warriors of darkness are residing. See, they know that the threat is on both the light and the darkness. Yeah, so you go through each, getting their help from each crystal, and then venturing to where the cloud of darkness is, and you end up in this epic battle. See, the warriors of darkness weaken her, weaken the cloud of darkness to a point that now the warriors of light can dispel it, but not without a nice long battle. And it is an epic battle. You got to give it that. They made it epic. And once they are victorious, the world returns to its peace. The heroes say a final farewell to all their friends who they've made. There are some apparent courtships in the works, and everybody has a happy ending. Final Fantasy III is an excellent game of the first seven Final Fantasies. The introduction of jobs adds a new dynamic because instead of one person doing one particular job, you could have multiple people playing multiple jobs, which can help you. I mean, let's face it, you come across a locked door, I can't open it. We're going to need a magic key. I'll become a thief. Oh. Roles like a scholar can help you deduce what'll work best against an enemy. Certain a knight, it's a good thing to have on your team, especially if one person is low health, because the knight can, you know, fend off the attack. It's kind of great. I mean, especially if one of your team's a healer, and they lay into him or her. I, the fact that you go from one world to another world, that was epic too. And I don't think anything like that was attempted on Nintendo before that. This is definitely a game to play, either if you play it the 3D version, which was initially released on DS and then got ported outside of that because this time Square had their wits together and made sure that they were allowed to produce their games outside of Nintendo. I mean, especially now that the Final Fantasy franchise from 7 on had to see, we're seeing multiple consoles and that, and being released on computer was definitely, opening it up to more people. It's just a shame that this title took so long to get out of Japan. I mean, it's understandable with how things were going. I mean, the world wasn't getting much of video games until worldwide until, or even on a sooner date than, well, after the internet was becoming more and more commonplace. It should have been released to outside of Japan sooner. However, I think the delay in releasing it, and then when it first came outside of Japan, it was on the DS and was developed using 3D imagery. I think that helped it. The ad campaign denoting all the different jobs. And of course, if you want to have a completionist play this type of thing, and they're going to max out all the jobs. Although the version I played had fixed a bit of a bug, I think, or an exploit that was in the DS version and the 3D version. Well, I don't know about all the 3D versions. They could have fixed it after that. But jobs advanced in the game in the DS version by earning certain experience, and it wasn't. The experience was more turn based in a battle. All you need to do to advance your job by one level for everybody is literally defend for about 5 6 rounds, and then attack on that last round, the seventh round or the sixth round. Technically should be the seventh round, because then everybody can have their levels upped one. I mean, this way you could probably max out all your characters if you want to take the time to grind. Literally by just going back to the first dungeon and just, attack me, you fool. Letting the weak enemies attack you. But it is a beautiful game, a beautiful experience. It's the first time you also have a massive airship that can act as a floating base. I mean, why pay at an inn to rest up when all you gotta do is get on your big airship and, you know, rest? Oh, we need more potions. Let's jump up to the ship and pay our little machine in our ship to pay. And if you get attacked in this thing, it'll do damage with a volley of arsenal attacks. It was beautiful. The shame you got this thing so late in the game. And of course, you have like summons that you can use in the game too, provided you are the right, task to do it. But to get the big summons, you have to have like a certain amount of, well, you have to hunt them down and defeat them. And those battles aren't easy. I mean, first is finding them, and at least one of them is on the floating island, or the floating continent. Actually, two of them are up there. That's worth it. Final Fantasy III is definitely a game for the Final Fantasy fans to play. It has the unique mark in history that of the first 7 games, it was the last one to come over to to come out of Japan. I mean, if you want to think about it this way, I would say that they came out of Japan and introduced to the world in the following order: 1, 4, 6, 7, 5, as part of a compilation, then 2, again part of a compilation, and then finally 3. Let that sink in. Let that sink in. Were there things that I would change? Well, yeah, but that's part of how gaming evolves. I mean, these games were made before the real time battle systems became commonplace that we would see in later games, later Final Fantasies. But it's definitely something I recommend any Final Fantasy player experiences. And that's all I'm going to say about Final Fantasy III. I thank you for listening if you listened to the end, and I hope you check out the game, the playthrough, purchase it on your own, and enjoy it. Bye all.